Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. Life wasn't fair, and some days it was really hard to deal with. I was married to Mary for almost 30 years, and now I was alone. I thought about what I would do without her clothes as I looked at closets full of them. At 52, I was by myself because an idiot chose to drive drunk. He hit Mary's car coming home from a bar. She didn't know what hit her. I had cried so many tears that I thought there were none left. Early on, everyone agreed that kids were not in the plan. Of course, that decision had upset both sets of parents, but they weren't around anymore. Following the accident, everyone in our group of friends sent their regrets and moved on with their lives. They had their own lives. Mary and I made a lot of money with our business together, but I lost interest in it without her. It had just been sold after a round of talks. I agreed to the terms a week ago. The money that was made and the very large sum were more than enough to keep me at ease until I joined her again. We did everything together and talked about everything except for one thing I didn't tell my love. Why would I risk my marriage for something I had kept secret since she came into my life? We were a good match in more than one way. I was about an inch taller than her. I didn't mind that she could look taller as long as she didn't wear shoes and look down at me. We were together for life and didn't care about what other people thought. We could feel the love between us. Mary and I got married when we were in college, where we met and fell in love. We were both 22 years old. On a small budget, I slowly built up a business idea off the ground. And after a year, Mary took over the selling part while I took care of setup. There were some rough spots, but then things picked up, and by the time we were in our 30s, we would go to the office every morning holding hands. As husband and wife, they worked for 7 or 8 hours. She led the large sales team, and I oversaw the staff. We left the same way we came in. We chose early on to deal with the stress of growing the business by going to a health club and keeping in shape. Every day for an hour in the morning was spent there, so even at age 52, there was no middle age for either of us, and our ideal weight was within a few pounds of each other. As I touched the soft cloth of one of her dresses, I thought about how I could always remember things. I had to hold on to some of Mary, or I would go crazy. In the following week, I was back in one of the closets, drinking in the scent of my wife. I was clean after taking a shower and padding back to the master bedroom. I found myself surrounded by her clothes because my mind took over. I grabbed one of Mary's skirts off the rack without even thinking about it and put it on. Pulling the silk line up to my waist, I zipped up the back and pressed the button. I hadn't worn a skirt in 33 years. That time it was badly made and the wrong size, and it was from a thrift store at a shopping mall. It looked so silly that I got rid of everything in my gathering. After a few weeks, I met Mary. This skirt was really nice. I put it back up, got dressed, and went to the living room to think for a long time about what had happened. The times I tried cross-dressing when I was a teen were times I could never really say why. I wasn't trans, but women's clothes had some kind of appeal to me, and I felt good when I wore them. Keeping that in mind was the hardest part. I never thought about getting dressed up and going out in public. After getting rid of my poor collection and meeting Mary, my life became so busy and full of things to do that I was able to hide that part of me in the back of my mind. It had stayed there until now. I finally got myself up in the early hours of the morning and went to bed to try to calm my mind down. After a few days, I told myself, who cares, and let my feelings come true. I made a for and against list. That caused a list of what needs to happen, and finally, after 2 weeks of studying on the web, a list of how-to guides. Each list had the same first item. Could Micheal pass as a woman? Now was the time to find out. First, I got my sideburns and most of my very thin beard shaved off. The blonde hair on my body could wait until a choice was made. After that, I took a shower and then stood next to our king-sized bed where everything was laid out. I got a girdle in the bottom of a drawer. Dark nylons hid the fact that my legs were not shaved, and then I put on my bra. I hooked up the small hooks, feeling like a smartass. I put my arms through the straps and pulled it down over my head to get it set up. The tried and true rolled up socks went in first, then the sheer slip went over my head. After that, I put on a jacket with long sleeves and a high neck because it was cooler. The tweed skirt was what made me think of all these ideas. Not only did everything seem to fit, but it still smelled like Mary. I thought that would stay even after dry cleaning. So far, so good, but I didn't look in the mirror and wouldn't until everything was in order. The suit's wool jacket had 4 buttons down the front, which made it fit better around my waist. Mary had worn the wig to a business meeting, but it wasn't the same color as her hair. A few years ago, there was a staff party, but it was styled in her curly style, and I put it on my head by feel. I almost fell while using one of her small, portable mirrors to put on lipstick. I broke down and had to take a break to gather myself. The last time I tasted that lipstick was when I kissed her goodbye for the last time. I didn't put on any other makeup. First, I wasn't sure about the right way to use it, and second, if nothing else worked, it didn't help. My feet were a little bigger than Mary's, which made shoes hard to find, but I managed to fit into a pair of black shoes with a 2-inch heel. It was now what people call the moment of truth. I was scared by what I saw in the full-length mirror. As I turned around, the woman in the mirror matched what I did. It's true that the skirt was a little too big in the back and too small in the waist, but the rest looked like a well-dressed 50-year-old woman wearing Mary's clothes. I broke down on the bed and cried. I cried over what I had lost and over what I had just found. After a few days, I flew across the country to San Francisco. As a businessman, I always moved carefully after making a choice to get the result I wanted. I was going to start with the how-to list. After checking into my hotel, I called to confirm the meeting with the owner of a store called Crossroads. The internet was a great resource, and this place was highly suggested by people in the West Coast group of crossdressers. There were sites closer to home that were just as good, but with what I had in mind, the fewer local links, the better. I took all the IDs out of my wallet and put a roll of bills in its place. Then I walked 4 or 5 blocks to meet the owner, Gloria. She or he was about the same age as me, but I never found out for sure. Meeting them made things just a little less embarrassing, even though everyone tried to put me at ease. When I was in a private room, my question was straightforward. I'd like to be able to sometimes pass as a woman my own age. Could you show me how to do that and help me? The last thing I want is to draw attention to myself. This is to get the personal power to meet a very real need. What Gloria did was tell me that I agreed to pay for a 1-hour private consultation, but only with my agreement and for no extra cost. She'd like one of her employees to join us. I agreed. She left for a moment and came back with a man who was at least 10 years younger than us. Hi, this is Tony. Among other things, he knows everything about hair. Please let him look for a moment. After 15 minutes, he spoke for the first time. Electrolysis is not a good idea for your beard. It could take at least a year of treatments every week, and I don't think you need to go through that. It's pretty light, so I'm going to start with a close shave and a few tips that will help you. There's no reason for you to be worried for at least 12 hours before it would need attention. You don't have to worry about your body hair at all. Any easily accessible product, such as Nair, will work well. Just remember to use a skin moisturizer afterward instead of getting irritated. I must respectfully say that at your age, you should not try shaving anything else besides your face. I can change your current haircut to be perfectly fine for a man, but one that under a well-fitted wig will hide everything. After that, he left, and Gloria spent the last hour not only reassuring me, but also talking about forms, foundation garments, and makeup mess-ups. I paid for that hour and set up longer lessons for the next few days. That was the best decision I ever made. And I left with a new haircut and a lot of respect for how professional they were. I flew home with a suitcase full of materials and almost an empty roll of bills and an email address for Gloria that she agreed to answer any questions or problems I had. I didn't want to sell our house because it held so many memories for me, but a woman going in and out could not be seen without drawing unwanted attention. This was going to be Michael's house. My plan was for another person, and I chose an apartment in a condo with our own door. I had to practice and get used to what I had first learned on my trip. That was something that could be done at home. Tony had done some magic with my eyebrows. Because I wore contacts that he had made to fit, my female self would wear them. Gloria had demanded that I buy a pair of pants that fit me well. They had shoes in my size with 2.5-inch heels, and I was to start wearing them around the house right away. At first, I could only handle 30 minutes at a time, but I slowly built up to longer periods without a lot of pain. I didn't even look at Mary's clothes for the first week or so. What I wore were the shoes and tried out the makeup tips Gloria had given me, like putting on one of the wigs Tony made for me. For the first few times, I was almost done because the look wasn't even close to what they got there in the shop. The main idea of the email I sent to Gloria was, "What am I doing wrong?" with a close-up of my most recent attempt. The answer was short. "Lighten up! You're being too heavy-handed." After a while of practicing, I liked what I saw in the mirror. My makeup softened and blended into my skin without making stark color contrasts. Even the little lines at the corners of my eyes were hard to see. The eyebrow pencil made the arched white hairs that matched the color of the wig. That and very little eye makeup and carefully applied lipstick in a muted shade of red made my face look very feminine. I cleaned my face after taking off the wig. The next thing on the list was crossed out. It was clear I didn't have to check. Dress practice in full. The next day, all I could think about was, "Mary, please help me." I had soaked in scented soap, and the body hair came off easily. Now that the girdle and pants were in place, I was ready to get dressed. Gloria provided the basic foundation garment and made sure it fit correctly. It was a long line girdle and bra that fit together in one piece, with a bit of padding on the bottom. I put my arms through the shoulder straps and began to close the front zipper. I took a deep breath and pulled it up past my waist to the top of the strap. I carefully rolled the nylons up my legs and attached the garters. I had done that before, but I could feel an almost nice feel since the hair on my legs was gone. The satin really did slide over my head and in place, with the bottom hem just above my knees. I put on one of Mary's silk kimonos and went over to the vanity table. I would have to go out in public if this kept up. I only had one pair of shoes and no socks that fit. As I painted my nails, I was struck again by how feminine a simple task looked on my hands. I worked on them until my makeup gave me the look I wanted, and then I put on the wig that matched Mary's hair color and brushed it in place. The long-sleeved pale green top buttoned up the front and had frills around the collar's neck. The buttons were hidden by more folds, and they were edged with dark green piping. The A-line skirt that hit at the knee was the same dark green, and I tucked the blouse in and then put the 2-inch wide belt around my waist very neatly. I put on large button clip-on earrings that matched the black shoes, which went with the skirt. I wasn't ready to make the decision to get my ears pierced yet. I might have to go back to see Gloria at some point for that, and some tips on how to deal with my voice problem. Mary's watch went on my left wrist, and I looked at myself very carefully in the full-length mirror. Even though it wasn't Mary, it was definitely a well-dressed woman who wouldn't make anyone look twice if seen outside. Then I made some tea and took the tray to the home theater, putting it on the table next to Mary's easy chair. One of our favorite movies was already set to play, and I made myself comfortable in the chair, even remembering to smooth my skirt as I sat down. The wedding band was slowly taken off my left hand and moved to my right. That's okay. It was replaced by Mary's rings. I turned down the lights and pushed the play button to begin the movie. I put my hands together as the theme song's music filled the room, put their rings next to each other in my lap so they touched, and I whispered, "Stay with me, Mary, and be a part of me. Help me handle it as time passes by." The movie was over. The tea was cold, and I was almost done with my day. Mary wasn't here, but she was in a way. I knew my love would never come back, but during the last 2 hours, I felt like she was sitting next to me. There were no more tears to shed. I was able to get close to her again. There was no logical reason, but there wasn't a need for one. If putting on her clothes would help me remember her and ease my pain, so be it. I put down the half cup of cold tea, poured myself a strong drink, and sat down again. It was impossible for what happened this evening, the almost painful beauty of it, to still be something in my head and heart if I tried to erase it. Call it every day. It made sense to do that. Like anything good when stressed, it loses its strength. I had to find a balance or lose what I had found just now. When the drink was over, I went back upstairs and took everything off, including the makeup. After a quick shower, I reached for one of Mary's nightgowns instead of my clothes. As I got into bed, I was suddenly filled with the feeling of loneliness, and there were still tears in her eyes. I really couldn't do this by myself. I had to get myself together. I needed to talk with someone. "How are you, Gloria?" After a few emails, I flew west again 4 days later. I had set up a 3-hour meeting with the owner of Crossroads for the evening. She told us she knew a nice, quiet place where we could have dinner. It was a surprise when they asked, but by early evening we had found a seat, made small talk, and ordered drinks and food. I had stopped thinking about her gender and just thought she was a woman. She looked at me with an eyebrow raised and her hands around the drink glass. The question that wasn't asked was clear, so I began to speak. We only stopped when our food was served and ate to give ourselves a reason to collect our thoughts. Gloria was quiet during dessert and was thinking so deeply that I had to hold my own tongue. "Micheal, I don't understand this. I'm great at what I do, but I'd like to help you, but what you're saying makes me doubt it. This is a whole new reason for someone to cross-dress, in my opinion. It goes without saying that many of the people I see need medical help and advice. I work with someone who isn't just a medical doctor, but a guide for the TS group. Thanks for trusting me enough to tell you what's going on. Trust me again and see this doctor. If you don't, Micheal, what's going on could get out of hand or become a crutch that will ruin the 20 or 25 years you still have to live. Please." I agreed because I knew I needed help. Gloria took out her cell phone and left the table, but came back in a little while. "I told them I had a client with a special case who doesn't live in this part of the country. He agreed to meet you tomorrow morning." She wrote down a name and address. I told the doctor my story again and again without feeling embarrassed. For about 30 minutes, he just listened and didn't say anything. After being quiet for a while, he spoke. "Micheal, I understand you do not live near here, is that correct?" "Yes. Tell me where you live and I'll tell you why. I'm just one of several dozen medical professionals who have formed a loose group to take care of the transgender community's needs across the country. I can't believe what you said can be fixed or helped without taking a close look at what's going on with you. Let me put you in touch with someone in our network that you can meet as often as possible." He saw that I was unsure. "Micheal, you're forgetting something in your desire to keep this private. I and anyone I send you to are bound by confidentiality. We will keep your secrets safe. All you have to do is trust us." He looked through a Rolodex, smiled, and said, "I know just the person. They're lucky. If anyone can help you figure out what to do and how to do it, it's Dr. West. She knows what to do and has the experience to do it." I thought Dr. West was a woman who was at least a few years older than me. In the first 15 minutes, she went over her qualifications and put me at ease. After that, Leanne, as I was told to call her, sat back in her chair and asked what was going on. For the third time, I talked about what has happened in the last few months that caused me to feel suffocated and overloaded. She put her hands under her chin and looked at me for a short time. "Micheal, I'm not going to hold back. That wouldn't help either of us any good. I'm going to ask you a very hard question to think about just before our next meeting. When you met Mary, you stopped dressing up as other people because you thought that if she knew, you were going to lose her. You're getting dressed again. I'm sorry, Micheal, but this is very important to any future steps. Do you want to look at clothes again because Mary is gone and you can't get her back? Does holding on really help you by clinging to a part of her? You need to be completely honest with yourself. Think about it, and I'll see you next week." Thanks for watching. Check out Patreon if you want to have early access to the other parts. If not, it will be online in a couple of days.